That's why I got my mic on. That's why I was sitting there playing around with it. And I was like, what's going on with this?
Oh, look at that cute little mic.
That's right. Yeah. It's like you have like a flower or something on the.
Now, my vlogging mic.
Oh, right. Vlogging? Oh, for like racing?
Racing, motorcycles. I'm going to start. Why do you think I had you cut that logo for me?
Right.
I'm going to start trying to mess around with YouTube a little bit. Yeah.
Perfect.
Good things.
Yeah. So Sergeant. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. Sergeant Leigh, you were saying that the cross training. So was that your first choice then when you cross trained?
So initially, I wanted to do mental health for the ADAPT program, the addiction counseling aspect of it. But upon doing the interviews through the retraining process, religious affairs was just really the better way to go. We can still do the same, like caring for people and have more fun events and more time like meeting the people where they're at and not bound by like clinical guidelines, essentially.
Right.
You know, we don't have just, hey, you have appointments at this time and this is the only care we can provide. So.
Okay. Nice. Well, that's good. That's good that it turned out. Was your tech school down at Maxwell?
It was.
Okay. So I always saw, and I don't know if it had changed, but so our tech school is in the, it's at Maxwell. It's where at the Jack School.
Mm.
And then I think maybe it used to be right next to it. I don't know where it is now, but
it is. Well, the chaplain school still is, but the religious affairs airmen they moved to Keesler the beginning of the fiscal year last year. So
interesting. What's going on, Sergeant Lust?
Just another day in paradise.
That's right. But now you're all in lockdown, huh?
Yeah, it's a soft lockdown. The Air Force is still kind of allowed to go around and do certain things, but yeah, essentially everything that we had up to this point has pretty much regressed back into us not really being able to go out into the general public area. They even just now released some more guidance that they're not letting dining in on the establishment anymore. So it's only takeaway or drive-through on base. So there's some crazy stuff. Yeah, there's just huge cluster popped up and things kind of, I don't want to say they blew out of control. They're trying to control it as much as they can, but I don't think that they expected it to blow out as big as it did here. So we're essentially getting a second wave, but we're the reason why the second wave's coming around. There's been a few cases reported off installation, but we're not sure what exactly is the cause of that. So
right.
Lockdown.
Yeah, no, that's definitely unfortunate over there because Okinawa is the place to be outside and be having fun and be doing things.
Well, luckily there's a broken up tropical depression that's ruining the island right now.
So all right, so there's two reasons then.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, we just had a hailstorm yesterday, and I've heard about these. No exaggeration, there is not a single vehicle on base that was not damaged.
Including yours.
Oh yeah. I mean, I don't care about mine. Mine's like a little old beat up truck. But I would say probably 1 in every 10 vehicles there was a broken window or a shattered windshield.
Ooh.
Out of the how many ever vehicles were parked on base. And the storm, it came in, it dumped right on the base, and then it dissipated as it moved out.
Yes.
Wow.
They were like
target acquired.
Yeah, like a little smaller than probably golf ball size.
Ooh, man. Get hit on the old noggin by one of those. I bet that'd be a good time.
I could feel it shaking the ground. It was crazy. From inside the building, you could feel it.
Yeah, I'm good. I'll take my typhoons.
That's exactly what I was thinking.
Typhoons aren't too bad. Typhoons aren't too bad. I was just telling our SJA, because he was saying, "Oh, you'll have hurricanes or typhoons." It's like it's pretty safe for the most part in Okinawa, anyways. Um, so I think this is the fourth episode now. We've had 7 episodes. This is the fourth episode on the podcast where I have people from Japan on the as guests. So I guess I don't want to let go or something, but I
Hard to let go.
gotta keep calling over there. But so for this one, it's really my attempt to get to know more about different career fields. Like in the legal world, we deal a lot with other career fields as far as, as far as Article 15s and as far as court martials and as far as discharges. And not many of us have had, a lot of experiences or really know what these airmen are actually going through or what their culture is like. And I think at every single AFSC, and obviously from being a PME instructor, I was able to learn that there is a specific culture to each AFSC. There's specific culture to each squadron that it's, very different than how the rest of the Air Force operates. And definitely for us, right? If all we've known in our career field, it's still pretty heavy on the retrainees, but we also have pipeliners now, and we're actually going to be getting more pipeliners down the line, and they're never going to experience life in a regular squadron, never going to experience what that life is like. And our attorneys, really, I mean, most of them have never operated in a Air Force squadron. So this is really just an attempt to start with vehicle maintenance, to take to explore a little bit about what the Logistics Readiness Squadron is all about, and kind of provide a little perspective, and maybe it can help us enhance our understanding of what the dealings are within the Logistics Readiness Squadron. So that's really the attempt and what we're trying to do to better know what happens in the AFSCs. But before we do that, let's just open it up for introductions. So, Sergeant Lust, if you want to start, then tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm TSgt Douglas Lust. I am currently a PME instructor, and Sergeant Perez was my boss at the time. I do come from a prior vehicle maintenance background, and I've been in for about 10 years. So spent 5 years in England. Now I'm 5 years here in Japan, and my time as a PME instructor is coming up very soon here. IPCS in April of next year, if the stars align and I'm allowed to leave. If not, then who knows how long I'll projected be stuck here until the COVID-19 pandemic kind of blows over. But yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Thank you. And Sergeant Leigh.
My name is Staff Sergeant Lathaniel Leigh. I have been in for just shy of 10 years as well. I started out vehicle maintenance. I was vehicle maintenance for 9 years. And then I have just recently retrained into the career field of religious affairs airmen. So I work on the chapel staff.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you both for agreeing to do this as well. This hopefully it reaches quite a lot of people and help once again understand a little bit better about the vehicle maintenance career field. So we'll just start with the question of how did you end up being vehicle maintenance? How did that go about? Is that something that you wanted to do when you joined? How did that happen?
So I'll start there. I, like most other people, filled out the list with the recruiter, and I had security forces on there, and having to get waivers to get accepted into the Air Force, I thought for sure I would get a security forces position. The recruiter told me, it's going to be 6 to 9 months before you hear from us with a job, and then you'll ship out after that. It wasn't even maybe 2 weeks later, he called me and said, I have a vehicle maintenance position, and you leave in 6 weeks. So it was on the list. I had an interesting theory behind it. My dad was a mechanic, so I just assumed that through osmosis, I would be good at the job. So that's why I put it on the list.
Interesting. Okay, so you already knew coming in, you accepted the job 6 weeks later, out
Yes,
to
sir.
basic. All right, Sergeant Lust, how's
Oh man, I know you know that story, but I'll tell the rest of the world. So my situation was not quite like that. Um, I was just trying to get out. I was trying to finish my degree, my associate's degree, and I knew I wasn't going to have enough money to go on and finish my bachelor's, trying to work a full-time job and do full-time school, college, and then try to come in as an officer. The Air Force has always kind of been my calling. I did Air Force JROTC, and my dad was in the military. He was a staff sergeant when he got out at 10 years. So I went down to the recruiter's office because I just sent both my buddies, both my best friends in high school, to the military. One joined the Air Force, he's security forces. The other one joined the Army, he's out now. But I went down there, I was like, hey, I need to get out. I need to go. What do you got? And he's like, well, I don't really have anything. I can send you open mechanical or open general or one of the open fields. And the first thought that popped in my head thinking about my dad is, man, I really don't want to be security forces. So I completely just bypassed open general and said, you know what, working with my hands might be kind of cool. Let's see what kind of job that I can get. And I put open mechanical in. Then I waited my full depth program time, like the 6.5 months, before they're like, hey, we don't know what you're doing. Hop on this bus. You're going to Lackland. And then it wasn't until about 5 weeks into basic training after they said, second week, when you put down all those jobs on your list to say, hey, this is what we have available. Put 8 down because you're going to get one of these. And this so happened to be the last job on my list because I didn't want to be a telephone pole operator or whatever the job was at the time. So I was like, I'll just throw this as a place setter at the bottom of the list just in case. And then bottom went to top. So here I am.
what was the duty title? Huh?
It
Telephone
was
pole?
like I think it was the cable dogs, what they call the cable dogs.
Oh,
The ones who run like telephone or underground wire for lines. I'm not sure what it was. I just remember seeing it and saying, I don't want to do that. I'd rather do vehicle maintenance before I did that. And then vehicle maintenance became my number one. My first talk, and I still remember it too, even 10 years from this day, because I thought, man, that'd be a cool job, was the B2 structural metal tech. That's the job I was bidding for. Lo and behold, if I had gotten that job, I would have been able to go to like all of one base, and that's it. So I'm kind of glad that things went the way that it did because of the ability to explore the world. But this was definitely the last pick job that I had in mind.
okay. All right, so you get vehicle maintenance. Both of you get vehicle maintenance, and you graduate basic training, and then where do you head out to?
Port Hueneme.
Yeah, Port Hueneme, California. It's a naval station, a CB post. So
Yeah, that is not what I was expecting when my orders got cut. It said Port Hueneme. I'm like, where is this? Why? This doesn't sound like an Air Force base. Why am I going here for tech school? These must be wrong. No, you're going to Naval Air Station or Naval Station Port Hueneme. Like, wow, okay.
All right, and that is a detachment, right, from the 345th?
Ooh, that's a
Do
good
you
question.
remember?
So the first 10 weeks of the tech school is joint with our counterparts in the Navy. So we all learn the general aspects of vehicles. And then it is a detachment out of Lackland where we finish up the last 6 weeks of our tech school, and that's called like the Unique Schoolhouse. I cannot remember, 341, it's out of Lackland.
Oh, okay, maybe
Too long
342nd.
now.
So you get there and then what do you do? Like, is it separated by different blocks? How is it? Is it like learning the actual concepts in the books and then you actually do hands-on? Like, how does it work?
It's a back and forth. So you do theory and then you do hands-on right after, but we do it in block segments. So the first thing that you learn about is internal combustion engines. And like literally you go into class, they give you like a day of book work, and then they give you a TO of exactly how to strip down and put back together this Ford 4-cylinder engine that they have set up in the shop, or at least when we went through, that's what it started off with. I'm not sure what they run now for Common Core over there, but yeah, they had it blocked out to different systems. So 1 week you would do internal combustion engines, next week you would do diesel engines, and then another week you would do brake, steering, suspension. So they would block it out. You would have a theory portion. You would also have progress checks, and you'd have progress checks both on hands-on and the book material. So not only were you taking paper tests, you were also doing hands-on to make sure that you're not going to kill someone out there, because there's a lot of sharp moving parts that can take a finger or hand off, and they want to make sure you can operate all that equipment safely.
Okay, good.
And then like Sergeant Leigh said, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Like Sergeant Leigh said, once you get done with the Common Core, then we move into the Air Force specialty vehicles. So this was one of those, hey, these are going to be unique, hence the term unique. These are going to be unique vehicles that you're going to work on that kind of go away from the general systems that you work on. There's a lot of commonalities, but there's going to be a lot of differences. So we're going to give you specialized training, because these vehicles don't just operate as a vehicle. There's other systems on the vehicle you need to learn about in order to be able to fix it, like our de-icers. Those are meant to de-ice airplanes in cold weather environments, but it's not just a chassis. It's not just an engine, brakes, steering, suspension, all that stuff. You have the heater unit in the back that you have to figure out, okay, well, how's that work? How does that heater fire? You know, what temperature does it need to be at before it'll set off the igniters, or it will shut the entire system down because it can't spark. So yeah.
Interesting. Definitely interesting. So for both of you then, what was your first impression of the career field? So now you've got it, you get in this training, right? And I guess I'm talking more about within tech school before you actually get to the operational side of vehicle maintenance.
For me, it was amazing, just the act of being in the Air Force. Like, it was such an achievement, and then to be learning such a useful skill, and just the gender ratio there too. It's not a heavily like manned field of females, so it was nice to be able to hold my own and learn these lessons and do the work alongside other counterparts. Definitely felt pretty fixed up, fired up, VM, thinking now I'm going to have skills outside of the Air Force if this isn't something that I do long term.
Okay, nice. How about you, Sergeant Lust?
I was hesitant at first. I was in denial because I knew that where the placement of this job was on my list. I was like, man, I really didn't want to do that, but I don't have a choice now. I signed that contract for 4 years. Thank God I did 4 years. I didn't know what to expect, and then I got there, and ICE really brought me in. Once we started stripping down the internal combustion engine, the amount of the only maintenance background I had before I joined the military was I knew how to change the oil on my motorcycle. That was it. I didn't know anything else. I tried to dabble, but I wasn't too good at it. So I kind of came in open-minded, and I was just like, you know what? Let's see what this is about. And as soon as we start stripping down that engine and put it back together and you start it for the first time, I was like, man, this is going to be awesome. I'm going to love this career field. We're going to be able to rebuild all these different things and work on all these different systems on these vehicles. This is going to be awesome. This is going to be a lot of fun. So in tech school, my first impression, I enjoyed it. The tech school was pretty easy-ish for me. Like, I was sitting there acing all my tests, acing all my progress checks. So I was like, man, this is going to be awesome. I like this career field. That was my initial impression.
All right. So let's transition that now into the operational Air Force. So you get to the operational Air Force, vehicle maintenance, first impression.
Oh, okay. Well, I remember because I was a little nervous. England was my first base, and I've only been to 2. But one of the reasons why I joined the Air Force was because I wanted to travel, and this was my first taste of it. I had my sponsor, and I asked them certain questions here and there, but I really wasn't getting too much communication back. And pretty much when I got there, it was like, hey, you need to find this bus that's going to take you to the base. So I get to Lakenheath, I get to Heathrow, and I didn't know where the bus was, and no one seemed to know, and I was like freaking out. I was like, man, this is weird. Like, does this usually happen? Am I going to just get left out here and not be able to make my way back to the base? Luckily, I asked enough people, and I saw other people who I determined were military. They helped me out to get on the right bus to get over there. And then I had to call the shop when I first got to Lakenheath because there was no one there waiting. So I was just like, man, okay, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go. I don't know where I'm staying. But then once I got picked up and we started going, everything was good. I came in a little hard-headed. I was one of those individuals that thought, hey, because I have an associate's degree, I'm smarter than other people. This is above, like, I'm above this, I'm above this. And I got humbled very quickly in my first month. And it changed my entire mentality of how to tackle being in the military, because I had done a couple jobs and I messed those jobs up. I blew like 10 gallons of oil all over our entranceway to one of our shops because I didn't put a oil filter on a dump truck right. I had stripped out a steering knuckle, the spindle on a steering knuckle on a Ford Ranger, and that down that vehicle for like 3 weeks. And I walked in there acting like I knew, and my supervisors at the time were like, cool, you think you know everything? Go ahead then. And then once I hit that point of defeat of like, I don't know what I'm doing, I went in the office and I was like, sir, I don't know what I'm doing. I need help. Like, I really don't know what I'm doing. I want to learn. And from that point on, I just had an open mind about it. But my initial hit was my own mentality kind of sunk me a little bit. And then once I got past that, things got better. And my first year there was amazing because I had such a quality team of who I worked with and the shop that I was a part of. I was like on cloud 9. Once I got my groove and I was figuring out how to do things, I loved it for the first year. So that was my initial impression of being once I got to operational.
Okay, great.
So I was overexcited. My first assignment, I was going to go to Vandenberg, California, which was going to be right up the coast from Port Hueneme, and so that was okay, and it was something new. And then I get pulled into the office, and notification, assignment changed. And at the time, I was going with one of my best girlfriends through the tech school to Vandenberg, Well, thankfully, both of our orders got changed and we both got sent to Luke Air Force Base in Phoenix, Arizona. The comfort of having the familiarness of having a friend going there as well really helped ease the transition. She had the room set up for me. She made sure it was clean. Like I said, there's not a lot of females, right? So I had a male sponsor, and he didn't care that there were cobwebs and bugs and the room was dirty. He did his job. He got me a room. So, she really made sure that my welcome was warm into the dorm environment. And I'll say I couldn't have asked for a better first base. It was a small-ish shop. Everybody, all the NCOs had been there quite a while. Everybody was really tight knit. The airmen, the NCOs, everybody was they'd all deployed together multiple times because for whatever reason that base just deploys a lot. And they were super helpful and just welcoming. Guys will be guys and do silly things. They would do like, whoever can eat this 100-piece pizza, I'll give you $20, and whoever can chug this soy sauce, I'll give you $20. Like, just really silly, stupid guy things. But I felt very welcomed. Like Sergeant Lust had said, right, there's technical orders or TOs, and it's troubleshooting. So my supervisor, sadly, he didn't want to be a supervisor. So like week 1 on the job, he's like, all right, here's your job. Here's the book. Figure it out. But I mean, really, the book breaks it down. So I learn better with somebody talking me through things. I'm not like a reader to retain or learn information. So that was a bit of a learning curve for me. But when you have the resources, and then everybody that was in the shop, so there were definitely people that wanted to help me learn, and it was a really cool experience at my first base.
Okay, good. Well, I'm glad to learn that, or I'm glad to know that both of your experiences, at least the first impression, was overall positive. Right? That's definitely not always the case with every career field. But I'm kind of interested also in the culture within LRS. So talk to me about LRS, belonging to the LRS squadron. What was that like? What's your impression of LRS overall?
So it's a big squadron. So the logistics readiness squadron, or depending on, what base you're at, you typically have a refueling section, you have a vehicle operator section, you have a supply section. And there was a little bit of rivalry between the flights, but being an airman in the dorms, we were all housed together. So for the most part, we got along there. We didn't necessarily work together, but it is very interesting for me to have been a part of the LRS, that, nothing moves on base without us. And if anybody needs to be able to be tied into the mission, that was the simplest way for me to understand it. Literally, nothing moves on base without us. If we're not fixing the refuelers, jets aren't getting fueled. If we're not fixing the vehicle, supplies aren't getting delivered. So being in the LRS, it's definitely, we're just a little cog in the machine, but a very important gear to keep things going.
Good. Yeah, no, that's great, right? To understand the bigger picture as well, and the importance of the squadron and the mission and our contributions to the mission as well. And Sergeant Lust, anything else to add?
Not really. I mean, she pretty much hit the nail on the head when it comes to being an LRS. It is highly competitive. You're always going to hear vehicle maintainers because for whatever reason, trend, whatever you want to call it, we usually see we don't win a lot of awards, and we're always kind of putting ourselves up against like, well, if we were this section, if we were supplier, if we were POL, or if we were ATOC or TMO or the loggies, we'd win awards. But all we do is fix vehicles, and they're the ones who are actually going out there and touching the mission more than we are. We're the support that are fixing the vehicles so the individuals can go and touch the mission and get things done. And that kind of caused a little bit of disparity every now and again. If you ask any vehicle maintainer, I'm pretty sure they'll tell you at their respective base who's winning awards in the squadron. And that kind of creates that rivalry. It's not really like a deep rooted rivalry, but yeah, there's definitely that little bit of rivalry there. It doesn't create any animosity or anything. We're all there for a job, a mission. We get whatever we need to done. It's just sometimes VM can feel a little underappreciated in LRS compared to the other squadrons. But then we feel like we get farmed out the most because usually we have a pretty decent sized flight, but everyone sits there and looks and thinks like, oh yeah, you're all just sitting around fixing vehicles or not fixing vehicles. Go help out Augmentee ATOC or go help Augmentee Supply. The first year that I was at Lakenheath, I had to do escort duty because I was part of FTAC. You did 2 weeks of escort duty before you actually went to your shop. And then I walked straight into, I remember it, because as soon as I got to the shop, that day were like, hey, we're working 12-hour shifts. We just had LCAP failure. Supply failed the LCAP. Some of you are going to go and augmentee and help supply out. The rest of you are going to work 12-hour shifts here at VM. And it just, it just felt like it took a little bit to actually get to be able to do my job because it seems like we got pawned off a lot. Like, oh yeah, we can give up and go help here and we can go help there. And, but it just didn't seem like there was too much correlation between everything that we were doing and that feeling of like we're up there with everyone else in the squadron. That was just my personal take though. It wasn't until a few years after I became a UDM that I really started to see like how LRS worked because I had to work with every single section at that point. But that's another story for another time.
All right, good. Well, here's a question, right? Like, how often did you see or did you interact with your first sergeant, and how often did you see or did you interact with the commander?
Never. Not one. The only interaction that I had at Lakenheath was commander's calls until I became a UDM. Then I saw the commander like once every few days because I had to go in the office and talk to him about reporting things and whatnot. But as a vehicle maintainer, the only time you see the first sergeant or the commander is if someone gets promoted or you're at a commander's call.
Or you get an Article 15.
Or you get an Article 15.
So I'm kind of a schmoozer. So my first base, I was a part of like the squadron or the kids' Christmas party that the commander's wife was doing. So he was there. Or my second duty location, it was a very small unit. And so I saw the commander a lot more often or the first sergeant. And I've always just appreciated the first sergeants, honestly. When I got to Kadena, I would make sure if I was in the squadron building, I was going to pop in and say hi to the first sergeant. Like, they work really hard and they don't always get to do fun things. So sometimes just popping in and saying hi and, giving them a little break from the rigmarole or the chaos that they get to navigate. So, but yeah, I do my best to stay away from the commander if I can.
That's right. Yeah, and that is different. That is definitely a different, a lot different than other units, other squadrons, and how other people operate as well. Because other people see the commanders a lot more often, and here it's like it's just so distant. Um, so, talk to me about what a day in the life of a vehicle maintainer looks like from two perspectives: the airman perspective and the NCO perspective. So, what does that look like?
So I would say depending on the unit, because I joined later. I wasn't 18, I was well into my 20s. And so I wasn't treated as such. Like I was treated as I am, like older than half of the NCOs. I'm older than half of the master sergeants that I've worked with, even as an airman or a staff sergeant. So there's been that little bit of difference. As an airman, I really, there is a lot of responsibility put on you in the sense that you're expected to work hard and you're expected to get things done with little to no direct supervision. Like you don't have somebody there guiding you through things. Like you're being a mechanic, you're just expected to be able to figure it out. So that was my experience as kind of an airman. As an NCO, as soon as I worked at becoming proficient at my job, they then placed me in an office because they were like, nope, you're organized, you keep your ducks in a row, and so we need you in the parts procurement section. So I didn't have a whole lot of experience as an actual wrench turner as an NCO.
Okay. Interesting. Sergeant Lust.
Okay, yeah, day to day, well, in about a minute and 40 seconds for airmen, and we can come back. But day to day for airmen, I don't want to say is pretty brainless, but when I came in, it was all about I had an airman that was next to me that was going to help train me and get me spun up on the job. But yeah, it's like Sergeant Leigh said, you're expected to come in and work hard with a little direction. Your NCOs are pretty much saying, hey, I need these jobs. Here's this work order. Back when we had paper work orders, they're like, hey, here's this work order. I need all these items closed out on it, and go. And then you had to pretty much go and search for yourself. Like, okay, well, where do I get a technical order? Do I go to TO library? Before ETIMS came up, and then ETIMS came up and it was like, all right, well, how do I get this digital version of the TO? Just finding out the little things. And then if you had an additional duty as an airman, you were expected that, okay, on top of being able to work these day-to-day jobs, I need to also make sure that I'm taking care of my additional duties like haz waste monitor or fuel tank custodian, whatever the case may be. You're very work focused. I go out there, do your job, and do it to the best that you can. If you need me, I'll be in the office, unless you were working with someone that was training you. Money down from the insurance company, the other part. You better silence your phone.
It's because I'm on my laptop. Like it
You better
can.
silence your notifications. You're driving me nuts. You're like a student to me right now, and I just want to be like, oh. Teaching virtually, I'm like, oh my gosh.
Oh, people do that too. They get their notifications while you're teaching.
Yeah, man. And you'll be like, hey, so-and-so answer this question I have. And then they'll be talking out here, bing, 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 bing. I'm like, boy, I'm going to strangle you.
No, my phone
know
is
you're
silent, but if my laptop's on, because they're both like Apple products.
Yeah.
I don't know.
So, Sergeant Lust, I think we left with you explaining the airman perspective from a vehicle maintainer, and I'm not sure if you were done with your.
Sure, I can finish that off. So yeah, I mean, it's just there's a lot of day to day that you're expected to do without very much direction. There is direction there, but it's very light direction. It's more of they want to see what you're going to do as an airman. Are you going to go and get those jobs and keep plodding along, or are they going to try to find you in the TO library because you're just trying to skate work and they're finding you in other places other than the shop floor working and jobbing? But I mean, as long as you come in with the mentality of I'm ready to go to work and have my coveralls on, ready to rock and roll by the designated time, which is like 7:30, 6:30, depends on what shop you're working for. As long as you had your coveralls ready to work and you're like, if you don't do morning meetings, you're checking your toolbox out at the start of the duty day, pretty much everyone just kind of leaves you alone. They expect you, especially if they deem you as a hard worker. If anything, you'll start getting farmed out to go help other jobs because they're like, hey, you're pretty high speed. You're a 5 level. Where can we use you? These people are struggling. Can you go help them? You're intuitive. Maybe you can help us figure this problem out. You'll get pulled depending on how much effort you put into the job. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. And so let's see the next question that I had. So legal troubles, right? Have you had airmen or have you known of anyone that has gone through the legal process as far as either an Article 15 or a court martial?
So back to, the squadron rivalry, right? Like at my first base, it seemed to have always been a different flight in the squadron that found themselves in those situations by the choices they made. I personally, I don't think I experienced any airmen. I mean, there were, typical behavior corrections that were adjusted with LOCs or LORs. But as far as Article 15s, I wasn't aware. If there were, they kept them kind of under wraps. So yeah, my second base, I was the only airman, so I wasn't getting in trouble. But my third base being a much bigger flight, there was a lot more mischief to be had because there were a lot more airmen. So,
Sergeant Lust?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of run a tight shift with VM. You don't get a lot of issues. I'm just trying to rack my brain. I don't think I've seen anyone get an Article 15, not out of VM. I did see a lot more issues here at this base though, like the airman that told the chief staff of the Air Force and his wife to get the F out of the road. And they tracked him down and stopped him at the gate because they were trying to go to gate 2 and drink. And the chief staff of the Air Force called security forces up and had him pulled over. And they had a very stern talking to.
Oh, wow. Well, that happened when?
That was back in 16, 17.
Mm-hmm.
I know you remember that. That was but besides like small things, you don't really get a lot of people acting crazy. It's like Tarlay said, most of the time it's the other parts of the squadron that you hear all the stories about, like, oh yeah, did you hear that supply just got a DUI or fuels did this or they flipped a vehicle or something. And you're just like, what is going on? And we're just sitting over here in our corner like, oh, we kind of just stick together and do our own thing. Yeah, I think that's the other thing is, back in England, at least, we had a very tight culture there. So, I mean, those were the people that if you're with them on duty, you're probably hanging out with them off duty. And we kind of just balanced each other out. Yeah, we'd get some crazy nights going and, some really, really irresponsible things could possibly happen. But we always had each other's back. And I think we all I don't want to say covered each other's tracks, but we took care of each other. Over the years and the culture change in the Air Force altogether, I feel like we've spaced out a lot more. Not to say that, a drinking culture is a good culture, but, just that partying and drinking and being together with each other all the time kind of created more of a tight culture than what we have now. Now there's a lot of things that are frowned upon, and it just doesn't feel like you have that family-esque feeling as much as I did back in 2011 when I first came in. But nothing crazy really.
Yeah, by no means are vehicle maintenance, angels. But I do, like Sergeant Lust said, I think it is just that bond. You're hanging out together, and there usually seems to be at least one voice of reason before things get too far. And we PT hard, so yeah, it's a lot of hard work, and so I don't know if in that, it just kind of keeps you a little more in the rails. One of our chiefs would say, like, you have guardrails, right? Like you're driving, and that's what they're there for, is because sometimes you might swerve, sometimes you might drift, but as long as you got those guardrails, and I really do feel like VM is just kind of those guardrails for the rest of the team, kind of keeps you in there.
Okay, interesting. And did you seem to have a pretty good understanding of the things that you could do that would have landed you in Article 15 or in a court martial? Like, did you know the things that, okay, if I do this, I'm in Article 15 realm?
Oh yeah, our chiefs or our higher management have told us stories about some of the things VM might have done back in the days, that would land you in hot water. I think the stories and experiences from other individuals that in the past culture, when the war was really going off, and people were just doing weird things to unwind and whatnot, definitely heard of a lot of stories of mischief that would land you Article 15s. And they kind of pass that off to us, and we just kind of know, like, all right, this is the line that's drawn in the sand that I don't need to cross, unless I want to end up like Sergeant so-and-so or Senior so-and-so. So.
Right, because, I mean, at Cadena, Cadena's a little bit different because the curfew, right? The curfew violation, which you would think that it's light, right? You would think, well, that's innocent enough. I violate curfew, whatever, right? But it isn't, right? Like, curfew violation will land you in Article 15. I mean, that's where it starts. That's where it begins. So in the vehicle maintenance culture, was that understanding there, and were people trying to not get caught outside of the curfew hours?
I'd say, yeah. I mean, I knew, like, from the get-go by multiple people, it's like, don't break curfew. If you're going to go out drinking, be out by 12. It's part of the reason why I don't really drink anymore. Back in England, we didn't have a curfew. You would go to the club and it was light out at 10 p.m. and you'd come out of the club at like 4 a.m. and it's still light out because summertime, you didn't get a lot of nighttime. But here it was just like, it was a hard line. They're like, don't get caught breaking curfew. This is the general going rate. At least that's what I was told. I don't know about Sergeant Leigh, but when I got here, Sergeant Hood pretty much took care of us. And he let us know, one of the best master sergeants we probably had in vehicle maintenance. He let us know, like, what not to do and what to do on this island, what to be careful about. He made sure that we were set straight before he released us into the wild, essentially.
Yeah, so having a clear cut, like, hey, this is what will get you in Article 15, I don't think it was until maybe 2 years ago, so I've been wearing the uniform for 8 years at that time, that I even quite understood in Article 15. I mean, I didn't want paperwork. I didn't want an LOC. And so I never really thought what was past that, right? So in ALS, they teach you the progressive process. But yeah, no, I was never like, well, what is going to get me in Article 15? I mean, I'm pretty sure drinking and driving would, and then other very extreme crimes. But those wasn't even really, those weren't even an option. Neither is drinking and driving. But as you mentioned, the Japan laws, one drink, which is not a culture that we're taught in America per se, or the guidelines that we know. In America, if you have a drink with dinner, you're not going to be above the driving limit. That's not the case in Japan. So, that was probably the only thing that because if I do have a drink, I knew I wasn't going to drive. That was probably the only thing that I was like, okay, this could correlate to an Article 15.
Right.
Or the curfew thing.
Absolutely. And that's very interesting, right? Because if you're concerned with not getting LOC, then obviously you're pretty far from that Article 15 realm. So that's pretty good. So now, I'm not sure, and again, this is within your culture, within your understanding in vehicle maintenance about the legal office. Did you know the legal office had enlisted members? Did you know it had paralegals? What was your perspective or perception? Had you made up any perhaps stereotypes about attorneys and paralegals?
The first time I explored the legal office at Lakenheath was like my 4-year mark, because I got an LOR in the unit deployment management office. That's another story. I wasn't in VM, but that's the first experience I ever had with even trying to go to legal. And when I went there, and I'm sure this is standard practice, but they pretty much told me to just send them an email, and that was it. Like, I had email communication, and the person who was helping me didn't really help me too much. I mean, they just said, pretty much there was nothing I could do, and that was it. And I was like, okay, well, that's cool. I guess I'll just go ahead and eat this one.
Well, there's something you can do, right? What was the one thing you could do?
Is it the 80 Airman Defense?
Well, right. It's the Airman Defense Council, which, I mean, not the Airman Defense Council. I'm sorry, the Area Defense Council. Defense Council. I got that.
That's who I emailed, and that's where they were like, you can't really do too much with this.
Oh, right. So that's where you went. You went to the Area Defense Council, and they were like, you can't do, but what can you do, though? I mean, you it's not like you can't. What can you do?
I don't know. I don't know what you're alluding to.
Well, you got an LOR, and you got 3 days to do what?
Oh, man. Yeah, we won't talk about that, because that was I did a rebuttal. I actually had a 2-page rebuttal ready to go, but I talked to my first sergeant about it, and my first sergeant at the time, we sat down, we talked for about a half hour, and it pretty much turned into, hey, sometimes things happen and they're not within your realm of control, but you got to accept responsibility for it. Lay on the sword. And he's like, by all means, you have the option. If you want to do this rebuttal, then lay it on there, and we'll see what happens. Or you can just lay on the sword. And that's kind of what he was encouraging of, and that's what I did. I laid on the sword. I did a quick rebuttal that was half-hearted. I was sorry for what had happened, but I wasn't sorry for the other things I had put in there and how the whole situation unveiled. But yeah, I put something in there and just kind of ran with it. So.
Yeah, and I don't I didn't really have an understanding of legal until getting to Okinawa and on Kadena. I feel like I needed something from legal for a vehicle.
A
Yeah.
power of attorney, maybe.
Right, right. So the powers of attorney, and that's kind of my understanding. And then when I re-enlisted, because legal gave me the briefing, but I'm not. Yeah, I know that there are officers and paralegals, but I'm not really sure of the aid that they really have to offer unless you were potentially in trouble with the exemption of the ADC, which I'd never utilized, but that they are a resource not assigned to the typical legal unit. Is that correct? So they're like a subunit so that there's no conflict of interest, if you will. Other than that,
that's right. Yeah, no, they're independent, right? They don't belong to the wing. They're just totally separate because they definitely work for the airmen, 100% confidentiality and everything like that. So, good. So, and again, I just because I want to know and I want to make sure that maybe our career field, the people that are watching this, that we get a better, because a lot of times we just get so stuck in our world, and that's just a little worldview, just to steal a lesson concept from our little world view is just stuck to that office, right? So when we get paperwork, we're kind of like disconnected from what's happening in the legal office. And it's like, all right, so we sometimes don't, person got in trouble. We got to process it and that's it, right? So regardless of what squadron they're from, regardless, we're just processing it and that's it. And sometimes when we go to court, we could potentially get in trouble with being too disconnected from what's actually happening in the unit, from what's actually happening in the overall Air Force, right? And it could potentially hurt our case if we're not really understanding of the day-to-day operations of every single unit and what they even know about what the legal office is, what the legal office can offer, what are the airmen like, all of those different things. So I'm curious to know whether you interacted with anyone from the legal office outside of the legal office. Like, have you seen them down in the community? Have you had like a paralegal buddy, maybe a 5.6 if you do 5.6, or anywhere else around the base?
You're the first one. 10
Okay.
years and you as my boss, and while we were teaching, you're my first interaction of actually having a direct line to paralegal. Actually, there was one other individual, and that was because they cross-trained out of paralegal to do fleet management and analysis. Yeah, and I asked them, because I talked to you about this before, about I've had the thoughts of cross-training into paralegal, but he didn't have a lot of whole nice things to say about it.
Well, come on up, come on down, Sergeant Lust. We'll take it. I'll vouch for you. I'll make sure that I'll Sergeant
Well,
Lust.
let me kind of go my other crossroads that I'm attempting first, and then maybe if that falls through, we'll see how many tech slots are open.
I
But
have
yeah,
nothing but great things to say about the paralegal field. But anyways, go ahead. I'm sorry.
so I only got a small hint of that because I only met and knew the guy for like 2 months. You were my real first experience of having someone that was of that career field outside of going to the legal office. That was my only interaction I've really had with them, short of the initial briefings where they have to come and talk, and the very, very, very few odd things that, hey, you need a power of attorney to buy or sell a vehicle, or go into the ADC because of things that have happened.
Okay. And Sergeant Leigh, anything different than that?
Nope. So only one story I saw some of the career field out on a weekend, and yeah, I was just like, you guys should probably just stop talking.
From the paralegals.
I'm not going to say if they were paralegals or lawyers, but
Oh,
yeah, I mean, they were young and they were just talking about, you know, the good time that was had the night before. But I'm like, I know who you guys are. I've seen you guys. You guys just stop talking.
oh wow. So okay, so that's interesting then, because once did you look at it differently, right? Just because of their position and what their job was. Did you
Right,
think
right.
if they would have been maintainers, would you have had that same reaction?
Probably not, right? Because it's almost more of what I knew to be normal. Um, yeah, and then it
Okay.
wasn't anything illegal or immoral that they were discussing. It was just, you know, young kids having fun.
All right. But there's a certain standard, right? I think that goes along with being an Air Force attorney, or a certain standard that goes with being an Air Force paralegal, I think. So,
I
right.
believe, yeah, that was a good catch. Like, yeah, that you caught on my perception of and how those standards might be different based on the jobs we hold.
Okay, interesting. Well, that's good. And yeah, I mean, that's our hope, is that we are being held to that standard, because we're trying to hold everybody else to that standard through doing Article 15s in courts. So that's always been my thing too. We've got to make sure that we're doing everything by the book, by the rules, um, because we are holding other people accountable. So I've got one more question. So the last question has to do with, how would you say that vehicle maintenance is different than the rest of the Air Force?
Ooh, okay. So since I recently retrained um, in religious affairs, or the chaplain corps, from what you described, is similar to the legal department, in that is that our officer side don't commonly have previous experience in the military or in a squadron. And until last year, we were a retrain only field as well for the NCO portion, or the enlisted side. So it is night and day different from my experience in vehicle maintenance, where your uniform is sharp, you know how to wear it, you've been corrected on how to wear it because you have that military experience. The processes in vehicle maintenance is so checks and balances. Like, you don't have somebody PCSing without having all of their duties transferred over to somebody else. It's just right. And to be cheesy, or for a lack of better terms, like, it's a well-oiled machine. There are standards, there are procedures, like, things don't get missed. The training, you have this long to do your CDCs, no ifs, ands, or buts. You have this long to conduct your 5 level. Like, we're all staying late if it doesn't happen. It's so different from my now current job. I showed up to my first duty location, and just timing of it, but my supervisor was on maternity leave for 3 months. She went like the week I got there. And so it's just me with some officers that don't know the military. And I come from a pretty structured 9 years. And so that has been very interesting. I can't say how it's different from like the rest of the Air Force, besides the fact that I know where I am now is not what I was used to in what I thought was the actual Air Force, being vehicle maintenance.
Right. Sergeant Lust?
I don't want to interject, so why wait? Um, that's a good question. It's hard because it depends on what you compare it to, and really, do you have that outreach to see? Luckily, we're PME instructors, so we get to dabble and see what different career fields are like, and we're very much like the maintainers in the Air Force, but not as tough. I don't want to say as tough. I don't know how to describe it, because you hear all the stories from our aircraft maintainers that come through Airman Leadership School, and it's like, as a vehicle maintainer, I sit there and think like, man, I got a good life. I work banker's hours. You know, if something happens to a vehicle, I'm not going to go to jail for it because it's not up in the air flying at 300 to 400 miles an hour that could possibly kill someone. Yes, you can possibly kill someone. We know the repercussions of what happens if we have poor maintenance. But it's not nearly as bad as what you hear from everyone else. So compared to the rest of the Air Force, yeah, I mean, we have our run-of-the-mill bad supervisors, bad leadership, just like every other career field does. Everyone's going to have a different story about what their experience was like. But compared to the rest of the military, I would very liken ourselves more to the maintenance side of things compared to the regular day-to-day operational jobs elsewhere. We're definitely out there. We're knuckle busters. We're out there to get our vehicles fixed, to keep everyone operating, because we literally support the entire base. I will venture to always ask anyone who thinks they don't need vehicle maintenance, cool, how are you going to get an aircraft to a hangar, or how are you going to get patients from one place that they're at, like at their house, to the hospital because they had a heart attack? How are you going to get fuel to jets? You can't really do a lot without VM because of the support that we provide. And that's where it's just, I think we vary, but we don't, just because of the fact that I think we're very in tune with how we support everyone else. We just go about things a little bit differently than a lot of other units do when it comes to the maintenance world of how we treat our people. I felt like that for the most part, I've been treated a lot more fairly than from the stories that I've heard of airmen in maintenance. Because when you're one of 150, 200 airmen that are attached to one aircraft, they might bat an eye and be like, oh, whatever, and pass you off along. Whereas we're not that spread out with VM. You know, we might have, 40, 50, 60 GIs in a shop, and everyone gets to know each other. So we have that better culture when it comes to maintenance in general. So.
Okay. Awesome. Well, this is very interesting. Definitely very interesting to get the perspective from vehicle maintenance. And I know that our career field will certainly gain something definitely from this, and just knowing more about different career fields and how they contribute to the mission and everything like that. So, but that's all I have. That's all the questions that I had. And again, I think it was definitely very educational and very informative. So thank you. Definitely thank you both for once again for agreeing to do this. We kind of went a little bit over an hour, but it was good.
Not hurt my feelings. You know me. I'm always here to talk. So.
That's right. Yes, you are.
Yes, I am.
Thank you for the opportunity, gentlemen. It was fun. Nice to reflect on what it was like in vehicle maintenance. Now that the nails are grown and my hands aren't dirty.
That's right. You've detached yourself.
I'm on the same track here soon, but hopefully next month I'll get a retraining advisory and I can start seeing if I can take these tech sergeant out slots and use them. Yeah.
That's right. I don't know if we have any tech sergeant paralegal left, but I can maybe make a phone call or something. I don't know. Let me know.
We'll see. We'll see. I got to get past getting shut down being a flyer first.
Oh, that's right. You gotta do that, and then computers, right? You trying to go to com still?
No. I'm past that.
Force.
Huh?
I'm recruiting you to the Space Force.
Oh, that's right.
Come be a space operator.
UAV sensor operator over there, I'll be more than happy to come your way.
Be a space operator.
That's right.
You know what? As long as there's a racetrack nearby, I'll be happy.
There you go. You can create one in the moon or on Mars or something.
Yeah, okay. Let me know how I'm going to get 93 unleaded over there.
Yeah, no, it's not going to be that.
And I'm not have air to actually, create some spark in the engine either.
All right, well, awesome, everyone. Well, Sergeant Leigh, have a good night.
Thank you. Have a good day, Sergeant Lust.
And Sergeant Lust, have a good day.
My morning, so I got a full day ahead of me. Thank you once again for this opportunity. Glad to see both your faces. I miss both of you, so.
Well, I miss you too, Sergeant Lust.
Yeah.
Take care and continue developing our young airmen.
I'll try.
Bye.
All right.